started writing for adults. So The Spy Who Lost Her Head was my first book, a detective but funny book, and Happily Never After. I started writing for adults, and then I got commissioned to write the Super Zero series. So that was the journey. I haven't made a shift. The next book I'm writing is actually for example, young adults, which will come out later this year. But I've been pulled into this world of talking to children because, as you mentioned earlier, there are very few Indian authors that children in India or their parents are aware of. Okay, so someone who's talking to them in their lingo, and I mean, it's a lovely world. Kids are so honest and so upfront about what they like and what not they like. So the next idea immediately comes over, and it's a children's book. So it's just what comes to me at each time. Firstly, we all react to the world in certain ways. We have coping mechanisms. Yeah. So the balls that are thrown to us, we back them out in a certain way. Okay? Some people use anger, some rationality, logic. Okay, I've always used humor. So it's a natural voice that comes to me. I find it easier to deflect an insult or a hurt through humor. And there are two reasons why this book actually has been written with humor. The first bit, it's because it's for children, and kids cannot be allowed to stay in the dark. Bad things happen, okay? They happen to everybody, but you can't let them stay in the bad thing that's happened. The whole idea is to show them that you can move on and how to move on. The second bit, of course, quite obviously, you had spoken to me privately about how absorbing the book is. That's why the humor, because it has to be a story in which kids will want to read, which children will want to read. It shouldn't be a preachy book saying, oh, if you're sad, do this. Step 1, write a diary. Step 2, blah, blah, blah. Why would a child pick it up? And why would they get these lessons subconsciously? I'm also an Indian parent, also living my life through my kids. But somewhere along the way, to be honest, I did decide. So it is actually an attitude. Whose life is it? It is, after all, my child's life, and they deserve to have as much independence and as much control over it and as much happiness. I cannot remote control them, right? They are not parts of me. They're, as Khalil Gibran says, they're bows from my arrow. They're going out. So to that extent, their private worlds, now that they're entering teenage, are very private. As the book says, Swara has a very, very secret private diary. I would not read that. Okay? They deserve to choose their own friends. Okay? What we are here for, as in the notes her mother makes her apologize, is to give them certain guidelines in life so that, and then sit back and watch and see where they go with that. We cannot handhold them all that. I don't think I dealt with them very well, but then that's fine. The whole idea in all my books and all my writing is that we're human, and to stop judging and stop blaming. So I don't think I dealt with it, but what came out of it was the book, because I realized that there are no guidelines for us or for the kids on how to deal with these huge, humongous losses now during the pandemic that hit us, this grief. So when I lost my mother and their grandmother, I was overwhelmed, obviously. They were much younger, my boys, and I found it easiest to just focus on the practical aspects about what next and what to do next, her bank accounts, her clothes, and easy to just ignore what they were feeling beyond are you okay, are you eating this. So right now I realize it's very important to give them a space to express themselves and to come back to us and to talk to us, or for us to even talk to them. And there's there are many places in the book, if you notice, where the mother herself is trying to be strong, but we have to be vulnerable. We have to show kids how to go through grief by example. They have to see us cry. They have to see us break down, because that's how much the person meant They don't have to bury it under, being strong all the time. Um, and I also think that grief is personal. There are no formulae. Swara gets very annoyed when everyone keeps calling her up to ask, you must be strong for this one and you must not look back. That's not true. Each person takes it them in their own way. But having said that, the privacy question, I think we should not probe. Keep the space open, bring up the point and say that, I miss your grandmother terribly. How do you feel? Many kids just don't express it and say, I'm fine, can I go down to play? Let them go. When my first son was about 2.5 years old, I went to the toy store to buy, he wanted dinosaurs, and I came back with a tea set. The little plastic tea sets, and it was in bright pink. Okay, no, and it had a stove and a gas cylinder and a broom. So I remember everyone being slightly horrified. My maid, especially, who was very possessive about my little boy, and she said, what are you doing? But I mean, they pink tea set, but he hasn't grown up to be a chef or anything, so it was a useless experiment. But recently, I read yesterday, in fact, in the Washington Post, right now, this day, this age, all over the world, how gender stereotypes exist. So in a conference room, if a woman is making a point or speaking too long, she is seen as dominant and bullying. The same point, the same thing that's said for the same quantity of time by a man, and he's seen as ambitious and dynamic till today. So how I've dealt with it consciously, because this I've tried hard, is to tell my boys that that compassion is number one. Compassion, empathy, and caring for others, and not only looking at your own self, is absolutely the number one trait that you should grow up to be with. It is not feminine; it's just being human. I think there are many other probably subconscious things that I've done, but this is the biggest that I've focused. No, you're right, actually. Super Zero was my first commissioned book. I was just asked to write a book for children if I could, any ideas. And two things. I saw my little boy again. He had this, my mother had made some curtain or something for him, some dupatta, cape, red cape, and he was jumping off the bed. And I thought that kids have such a need to emulate these big superheroes and to be super, and they don't realize how special and how talented each one is, that they're already super. No? So I got into that, I got into writing the book where each kid has some special power. And when I go out and do sessions on Super Zero, I actually tell in the classroom sessions of the kids that I try to make them find their own superpower, where there is just listening to someone else. That's a superpower. As I said, children are very perceptive and they're very honest. They completely cut through any kind of pretenses that you have. Right? They can see either they like a book or they don't like a book. Mama may buy the book for you, but you can't make you can't make the child like it. Sorry. So while writing for children, the first thing I always do is to make sure the story is absolutely lovely and engaging and beautiful, because I think we owe our kids that. We owe them an enjoyable, happy time. We not just lessons and do this and do that. A beautiful story. That's first. The second bit, which I think perhaps, I hope I've got right, is many authors try to dumb it down for kids. You're writing for children, put it in simplistic, simple language and tone, and not needed. Each generation is smarter than the earlier ones. So I try to treat them with respect and for their intelligence. And sometimes my editors have come back and said, do you think this word will be understood? I said, well, digital age, if they don't understand it, they'll Google it up. but or is this too, I think one of you had asked once, is this too adult a feeling? I'm not sure. I don't think so. So I get asked this question, as you can imagine, every time. Unfortunately, my answer is nothing you are doing for your child, but to re-examine your own perspective. For parents, I would say, look at your own perspective. And when you ask a parent or a group of parents, when I go out and say, what do you want your child to grow up to be? Answers are always, including mine, I want them to be happy. But we're not doing that, because what do? Our own perspective is we treat them as projects. We treat them, we stuff as much non-fiction and knowledge and wisdom into. So go to a bookstore or go to a book fair and pick up these science experiments and this and history. And, there is so much that we are trying to do to build up their knowledge. But give them stories, let them choose. So that's the main thing. Let them choose what they love, because that's a huge investment. You don't know what a book does to you. It goes in and it seeps in and it builds your character. It builds your intelligence, your empathy, your understanding of the world. And it gives that child 2 hours, plus they revisit the book another 2 hours of pure enjoyment. And I think we owe that to our kids. So that's how you get them to read more. Let them choose. Writing more. Let them free. So give them a challenge. Just 3 days back, I had a session where the Super Zero, and they asked me, why aren't you writing another Super Zero book after the 3? And I said, why don't you give me some ideas on what I could write about? And, the number of things that popped up, and including some mails, which I still keep getting, that, Super Zero should be tackling this or tackling the virus right now. So challenge their imagination. Give them something, tell them if they come up with some crazy thing about, why aren't dinosaurs alive anymore? Say, why don't you write it out? Tell me how that will happen. So again, I have always been a writer myself, and because I realized, let them choose. Okay. So my son at 7 or 8, he picked up Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, which is an adult book. It may have had some things that he did not understand, but he read it. But that's a very good point. And you're right. There are some issues which are too large, and the depth to talk about everything, I'd say. So the age they should read a book is the age that you should talk about it. If a 3-year-old asks a question about where did this person go, where have they suddenly disappeared to? And if we can talk about it, I think that's a good age to be reading about it as well. Because if they have a question, the risk of not answering it is much worse than the risk of, answering it wrong. May I read one tiny bit here?
Yes.
So Swara, for example, how you answer it. Swara, for example, this 9-year-old child has been asking for a puppy all her life. If you remember, there's this whole page which only says, I want a puppy. And then after her grandmother passes and they want to distract her, they get her a puppy. And she's very excited at first. Then slowly something sank deep into her heart. She said softly, I don't want a puppy. Appa stopped and looked up at her, brush in hand. But Swara, you wanted a puppy as a birthday gift every single birthday so far. I don't want anyone else to love, is what she said. Finally, they all just go away, is what she never said. Thought, but never said. So this is probably how I would say a book gets it across. A book starts a conversation. So a book talks about grief, or at least this book does, grief, death, loss, in a way that children can understand or empathize and go along with it. It's not drastic, black and white, hard, harsh answers. Boundaries have dissolved. That's my reaction to all sorts of boundaries. So the very fact that I'm sitting and talking to you here, sitting in Singapore, otherwise my physical interaction would have been much less. When I was in Bangalore, I moved about 3 years back, I could do a lot, loads more sessions and classroom visits, which I can't now. But now we're suddenly on par all over the world. We can get to speak to each other, hear each other, no visas required, no flights required, no timing. So boundaries have changed. As a family, boundaries have dissolved. As a family, the first bit when we were locked down, we got to spend a lot of time together. Okay. And, my hubby introduced the boys to actually, so now we listen to real good music because it's not the stuff you listen to. You know? So listen to music, old black and white films, and we played cards. So there was suddenly time. We were given this gift of time for the first 2 months to spend together. And so that's positive that I've taken out, honestly, the lockdown. I was an only child and a girl. So my idea of boys growing up was completely limited. So I have not really treated them as boys. I've treated them as people, human beings, sometimes even as dogs, because I love dogs and I call them my puppies. But it has been very honestly, the difference that I've felt is in how much they articulate or express. When I need to know what's happened in class, I almost never know. It's on that WhatsApp group, which some mother of a girl is saying, do you know this happened? And do you know this happened to your son? So when I ask them, how was the day? Great. What happened? Nothing. And sometimes I like burst out and say, why are we paying your fees if nothing happens in your school? So, but then that's been my learning. It's for boys. Maybe it's something genetic. I'm not sure, but we need to give them their space. I'm sure we need to give all adults, but women, by nature, we are more expressive. We are more articulate. We reach out to each other. We get comfort and we get solace. Do not judge. I do not judge my sons by the way I react. That's been my greatest learning. They have their own ways.